you need to know how to ride the bulldozer, right? So you don't go through somebody's house, right, by accident.
And he's like, yeah, oh my God, I can't stop.
Some say these two trainers were quietly in the shadows. Robert Weatherwax, last of the Legendary Lassie Trainers, from the world's greatest movie dog training family, was quietly hidden in his TV work. And Christophe Clugston, elite action K9 trainer, was traveling from the sub-zero Arctic to the sweltering jungle heat, training dogs on 3 continents. But a chance meeting changed all of that. Now, Robert and Christophe have joined forces and they're breaking the silence. For the first time, the secretive and hidden world of the movie dog trainer and the science of the elite tactical trainer will be revealed. That's right, they are out of the shadows. Welcome to Tactical Practical.
Okay, we're back. Finally, we have had a break, so back to Tactical Practical podcasts. And it's Christophe Clugston, the guy who's got the quarter-mile sit, stay, and recall, and also the almost 120-pound American Bulldog that can limp. No one else has got that. And I got to put that out there because credentials. And then, of course, I'm joined with, the guy who's the last of the famous Legendary Lassie Trainers. And you should know his name is Robert Weatherwax. So this podcast, we're going to be talking about something that a lot of people have questions about, and that is, what should you look for in a dog trainer, or what are the qualities you need in a dog trainer, or what is our advice to you about choosing a dog trainer if you can't get hold of either one of us, which is possible depending on where you live. You could get hold of us. And we do consultations. I just want to put that out there because a lot of times people are not paying attention. They're not going through all the podcasts, are skipping around. And I know that by looking at the analytics. So anyway, I'm going to go through a list of what I think should be the qualities you look for in a dog trainer. And then Robert is going to give you his, and then we'll probably tell you some weirdness after that, like we normally do. So anyway, all right, let's get right down to it. So what should you look for in a dog trainer? Okay, number one, you're going to have to know, obviously you would probably know, what type of dog training that you want done. Because if you're just talking about pet dog training, that's much easier to get accomplished because it's really, let's just be honest, it's the bottom of the dog training world. It's the little leaguers. Not as difficult as other types of dog training. And obviously, if you want to have a gun dog, a bird dog trained, you're not going to go to a pet dog trainer. You're going to look for someone who's a gun dog or a bird dog trainer. And same thing if you're looking for a personal protection dog, you're going to go to someone who's done that. It's much more difficult than pet dog stuff and requires a bigger infrastructure, more experience, et cetera, et cetera. And if you were some reason looking to have a dog trained for exclusive things like search and rescue, you would go to a search and rescue, avalanche, many subcategories of search and rescue dogs. So you would go to a trainer who's worked in that area. And that leads me to, they should have experience, and that should be verifiable experience. And that needs to be more than 10 years, in my opinion. If you're really looking for somebody good, somebody under 10 years is still a journeyman in my estimation. I think Robert will agree with that because we have a century of experience, and you're just not going to find anybody on YouTube that matches us. And I don't think, we're going to say, hey, you got to find somebody who can match us, because you're not going to be able to. So in my 50 years of dog training, I'm going to tell you that you need somebody who's put in 10 years, because there's a lot of reasons for that. And one of the things that will lead to is, how did they learn how to train dogs? Did they do that through an apprenticeship? Because that was the way it used to be done. It's very rare nowadays. And if they didn't do that, did they go to a dog training school? And if they did go to a dog training school, which dog training school? Because there's only a few that are really worth anything. I'm just being honest with you. And those are working dog training schools anyway. So, and they will lead to another aspect of what types of dogs have they trained. And by that, I mean, what breeds have they trained? Because again, when we pick on basset hounds, training a basset hound is very different than training a poodle, a standard poodle, or a miniature poodle, or training a German Shepherd. There are easy dogs to train, and some dog trainers will stay away from dogs that are not easy to train. You'll find people who will not train Afghan hounds. They will not train Borzos. They will not train Saluki. They will not train black and red coon dogs, hound dogs, they're called. But because they're more difficult to train, and they won't train American Bulldogs. And again, like, what are you looking for? You got to have somebody who's had varied experience with a lot of different breeds. And I speak to you because I had a lot of experience. Robert's had a lot of experience in that. There's some dogs that Robert doesn't feel are easy to train, and there's some dogs that I feel and I know that are not easy to train. And we agree on some of those. Sometimes it's a personal thing, which ones you like, which ones you don't like. And there are some dogs, like if you're looking for a trainer for your toy poodle or your Chihuahua, Shih Tzu, Maltese, you need a different type of trainer than the normal pet dog trainer, because they need experience with the smaller dogs. It's not the same training. We had a podcast where we sort of talked about that, but it's a lot different training a small dog as opposed to training a normal size, medium, or large, or extremely large dog. Because you're not going to train a Chihuahua the same way you train a Saint Bernard. And if you got a trainer who can train both, you've got a trainer who can train both, you've got a good trainer, which Robert has done. I point that out because, other people are not admitting to the fact that we know what we're talking about. So, and that goes to against demonstrating your work, and they should have a demo dog. And now some people don't have a demo dog, and I don't know why they don't have a demo dog, but then there should be video of their work somewhere. Now, in the case of me, you can see my work is on YouTube. I put it out. That's one of the reasons I put it out there, even though there are people who try to diminish it. It's not that difficult to do a quarter-mile sit stay and a recall, yet they can't do it. They don't have any video of it. And it's the same thing. Robert has dogs that are in movies. You can see his work on the movies. And we're trying to find some obscure video of one of his dogs, Phoenix, by the way. Hopefully we'll be able to unearth that at some point. So stay tuned about that. So they should have a demo dog, dog right now that they have. If not, they got videos. And if they don't have that, they don't have videos of dogs they've trained, then, I'd steer clear of that. Also, that goes to how many different types of dogs that they train. They should have videos of them training different types of dogs. Now, with a movie dog trainer, that you're going to see that, because they're not going to just stay with one type of dog. And the same thing with me. You can see I have hunting dogs. I have a super dog, the Dutch Shepherd, and I have an extremely hard dog to train, an American Bulldog. You can see it. I can train all different types of dogs. A lot of people can't do that, and you'll see a lot of people on YouTube, Instagram, and stuff like that. They only work with Border Collies. They only work with Malinois. They only work with German Shepherds. They only work with poodles or Australian Shepherds, because those are the easier, or Golden Retrievers. Those are the easier dogs to train. They're faster to learn, and you can train them a certain way. You cannot train a Basset Hound the same way you train a Malinois. It doesn't work, and they don't know those methods. So my point is, if you find someone who's got a lot of experience with different types of dogs, means they know a lot of different methods to teach dogs, not just one way. And again, you need somebody who can train a lot of different ways, which is where Robert and I think, stand on top of everybody else, because we know more than they do. And it's just, that's just a statement of fact. We're not stopping them from learning, and then come to us and learn, by the way. So I want to put that out there. And where have they trained? And by that, I mean, how many different places have they trained dogs? What in the United States have they trained in different states? Have they trained in the snow? Have they trained where it's cold, where it's warm? Have they trained in other countries? And that's because that goes to the experience of the dog trainer. The more places you've trained in, the more reference of material you have, and the better trainer you are. The same thing when people say, well, I don't want my dog to limp, as if that's really easy. But obviously, if I can do the hard stuff, I can easily teach the easy stuff, but it doesn't go the other way around. You know, I had somebody try to make a snide comment like, well, yeah, so it's not that difficult for a dog to do what you have him do, but I don't need that. I just need the dog to do a downstay in my kitchen. It's like, yeah, well, obviously, if I can pull off quarter miles, I can do the fun in the kitchen. But your kitchen doesn't mean you can pull off a quarter mile, and you won't even begin to do it. And I put out there, and I'm putting it out again because I'm a little tired of this from people just not, recognizing that there are levels of dog trainers, just like in everything else. Just like there's levels of professional fighters. The Ali was way above a lot of people. A lot of people, and I don't want to throw out names at this point, but he was better than a lot of people. And saying that this guy, got in the gym is equal to Ali is not accurate. So when you are one of the better people, you're not scared of putting out challenges, which I put out, which I'm still waiting on Omar to accept my Bulldog challenge. But on this other thing, people, we'll put up $10,000. Let's see which one of us can train a dog to do better. Okay, we'll do that. But I haven't had anybody accept. I just throw that out there because I'm confident. And if you're confident, you'll back up what you say. And that's one of the things I would throw out there, and I'm unabashed about that. And one of the things that I think is sort of important, I'm getting near the end of my list, by the way, so is how many dogs have they trained? Obviously, if somebody's been doing it for a long period of time, like 10 years, like I'm saying, they will have experience with many types of dogs. And if they've done an apprenticeship and they've trained different types of dogs, then they'll have a really great wealth of information that they can use to train your dog. It's not easy. This is the same, I would say this, I take this with the same seriousness of having your dog trained as going in for surgery. Now, you want to ask some important questions of a surgeon. Who did they study with? How many surgeries did they pull off? How many surgeries of this type? Now, you're not going to go to a foot doctor if you need throat surgery. So same thing here. If you need a bird dog trained, you're not going to go to a pet dog trainer. Same thing. There's specialists in every field. And some people have, it's like, how do I know so much? Because I've been doing it for so long. So I have many different specialties. And once again, I want to reiterate a couple things before I turn it over to Robert. If you can do the hard stuff, the things that other people can't do, then you can easily train the other things. The sits, the downs, the go to place, which is a mark for us, basically. The mark, go to the mark. This is something a lot of people struggle with. We call these beginning pet dog people the struggling sit-stay trainers, because they are. And I tell you, aim high, and I show you in my videos what is possible. So that's what I try to do with my videos on my channel. That's one of the things. Aim high and look at what is possible, and then maybe you'll be influenced by that and want to obtain that, and we can help you along the way. Anyway, so you can go back through those. I was pretty good. Didn't go off on too many tangents whatsoever. So anyway, Robert, what would be your advice to people who are looking to get a dog trained and finding a dog trainer?
Well, there's a lot of things to it. I mean, obviously, being a good trainer is obviously very important as far as who you hire. However, there's a lot of people who are really good trainers who really can't teach you anything. A perfect example is when I was working for Carl Miller. He always said, you're never going to learn anything from your dad because he doesn't think about what he's doing. A lot of times when I learned from my dad, I learned by watching him. He didn't explain anything to me. He didn't say, well, this is why I'm doing this, Rob. This is why I'm doing this. This is why I'm doing this. He just did it and expected me to know why he was doing it, and process and everything was supposed to make sense to me. But it didn't until I'd seen it over years and years. That's why my experience as a trainer goes beyond my professional experience, because I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what these other guys were doing. And of course, Christophe mentioned, who were you taught by? Your teachers, what schools you went to, who were your instructors. Obviously, all my instructors came from the film industry. That's something that Christophe and I have in common, is we have roots in the TV and film industry. And that kind of put us on the path to where we are today. But I think what made me a good trainer was working for a lot of different trainers. I worked for Carl, and I worked for Boone, and I worked for my dad, and I worked for Richard and Steven. Over the years, all these trainers that worked for my dad, And it gave me a different perspective. It gave me, I always tell my clients, I always have a plan B. You need to have an experienced trainer because an experienced trainer will always have a plan B. They might have a plan C and a plan D because they've done it so many times. They're not relying on one method to make it happen. They're like, oh, this isn't working on this dog, so let's try this based on experience. Now, if you get somebody like Christophe said who has less than 10 years experience, they're not going to have a lot of options after their first one has been eliminated. So you need to be flexible. You need to be versatile as a trainer. Now, there are a lot of trainers who are working with border collies and golden retrievers, and I feel like, oh yeah, whatever. You know, my dad said any idiot can train a border collie, right? And it's probably true because you can make mistakes with a border collie, and they'll forgive you for those mistakes. If you make a mistake with a dog like a Dalmatian, you're going to pay for that mistake for years and years and years, because everything that happens after that is going to be kind of disjointed by the way that the basics weren't taught properly, because these dogs they don't figure things out quite as easily. So you really have to guide them. Now, I'll tell you what I look for in a trainer. If it were me, is I'd look for somebody like me or Christophe who has the patience and the experience to be able to tell you what they're doing, because a lot of trainers don't know what they're doing. I don't mean that literally, but I mean they don't know what they're doing. They're not really mirroring themselves and saying, okay, I do this and then I do this. Carl mirrored himself. That's why he said I would never learn anything from my dad, because my dad did everything subconsciously. He didn't really, he wasn't very deliberate. Carl was very deliberate in the way that he taught me. So when he said, this is why you do this, he got down to everything, even the way that the snap of the leash, the reaction of the dog. And that's important. It's important to see a lot of different breeds so that you can learn. My dad always said, I said, Dad, how do you become a good dog trainer? He says, you train a lot of dogs. You train a lot of dogs. And that's what I've done. So when we look at the two of us, we've probably trained, I don't know, to some degree, maybe 10,000 dogs in our lifetimes between us. And that's a lot of dogs. A lot of people will say, oh, I've trained 100 dogs. I've trained 200 dogs. But that's not enough. 200 dogs is just like the tip of the iceberg. It's not even, you're just getting your feet wet at that point. Like Christophe said, it's a journeyman. A journeyman is a guy who's like a journeyman fighter's fought everybody, but you can't remember his name, right? You can't remember his name because there was nothing exceptional about what he did. And of course, a lot of times he's used to test other trainers or other fighters to see how ready they are to take the next step up the contenders list. Yeah. So the bottom line before I pass this over to Christophe is you need a trainer with patience. Everybody talks about Cesar Millan, but I will tell you that my clients back in LA didn't like Cesar Millan because he was condescending, because his attitude did not foster patience with the clients. Sure, maybe he can teach a dog a certain thing really well, but he's not going to be able to explain it to you to where you're going to be able to retain it and maintain the training. Because to me, it's all about maintaining the training. And if your trainer is not patient, is not teaching you how he's doing it, you're not going to be able to maintain the training. And then you're going to end up calling another trainer a year down the road to fix all the mistakes that you're making because your first trainer never really taught you. So that's why when we talked about board and train trainers don't need to be great teachers, because you don't see most of what they're doing. They're doing it on their compound, at their home, and you're just getting the finished product. Somebody's saying, okay, here's the car. They drop it in your driveway. You don't know how to turn on the headlights. You don't know how to make the car, go from four-wheel drive to standard drive. And it's like, well, wait, hey, come back. Well, you've got the car, right? You've got the car. It's nice. It's really nice. I don't know how to drive it. I don't know how to turn on the radio. But my dad used to have me program all his VCRs. Every time we got a VCR, he'd have me program it because he didn't know how to. And then, of course, once I programmed it, then he'd play it, and then, and he'd never ask me anything else. But yeah, that's kind of the way he was. It's like, and to this day, my dad still has to look around, like, where's the on button on this computer? Because he never really, forced himself to learn these things. So the bottom line for me, without going on to tangents, is that you need a trainer who is a teacher, who knows how to transmit the ideas from his head and from his leash to your head and to your leash, and so that you can be able to duplicate some of the things that you're never going to be able to duplicate it 100%. But if you could come close to what your trainer was doing and your technique and your style and your duration of training and all the different things that constitute a training session, then that's what you need. You just need someone who's going to be able to teach you how to continue training so that you'll retain it. Wouldn't you agree, Christophe?
Yeah, it's something right there that we're assuming. And I know that it's a big assumption and it's not true all the time. We're assuming that you're a person who wants to be involved with your dog and the training and also wants to understand it. Now, there are people who don't want that. I will say that because otherwise we're neglecting a big portion of people, because there are a lot of people who don't want to know anything other than, okay, what do I just tell the dog? What do I tell the dog to do? And there are some things I can say that why we do certain training like we do, and I don't change it to how some people are doing it, and that has to do with the stay. For example, there is a separate stay command because I think people make mistakes. Normal people will make a mistake. It's like a gun having a safety besides just the trigger. And with the thumb safety, it's much safer to have that and have the dog with the stay added. Some people, well, sit just means stay until I tell them something else. Well, normal people make mistakes there, and you start ruining the dog that way. I'm throwing that in there. It's a little added extra bonus. But the point is that we're both assuming that you care about your dogs. You want to know about the training. Now, people who have personal protection dogs, and they're spending $65,000, $30,000 on up. That's how it is. Putting it out there for people, letting you know what they cost and stuff. Those dogs are selected, highly specific types of dogs. Not every dog can do it. And they are got a set of commands, and you as the owner have to learn that. You also have to, but generally if they're investing that sort of money, they'll be interested. But some people who do the board and trains like we're talking about, especially with the trainers who are trying to say I can do everything in 2 or 3 weeks. I know those methods, and they won't try to train every dog again because that method won't work with every type of dog. And you cannot train a dog in 2 or 3 weeks. You can make a foundation. And if they say they're completely trained, that's a lie. That's a lie. I'll put that as it's not the way. It's the same thing as I tell you, I can start teaching you Spanish depending on your aptitude in 2 or 3 weeks in an immersion. Same thing would be like a board and train, but you're not going to be able to pull off conversations about everything in Spanish. It's impossible. The same thing, or French or Italian or whatever. You're not going to be able to do that. And that's something we got to be honest about. And a lot of people they're getting a dog that's been trained at a certain level, and it's like working out, being in shape, lifting weights, running, whatever. It's you got to keep at it. It's a constant thing. You have to start out, and then you lay the foundation, but you got to maintain it. That's what Robert was talking about, transferring the information about how to maintain the dog's level of obedience. Basically, that has to be transmitted to the client. And in my case, I train a lot of people who are dog trainers, which is what I like to do, because Robert's saying, we're teachers. Yeah, that's what I do. I was a teacher. I mean, public school teacher for one thing, but I've been, training self-defense and language stuff for a really long period of time too. And I was doing dog stuff just on the down low, as we used to say, for a really long time. But my point being that, it's about being a teacher and being able to pass the skills on, what is salient, what's important. And if you can't maintain it, like that's what Robert was saying, if you can't maintain that, then your dog is going to deteriorate because you're not. And we find a lot of people not keeping up with the protocols and what we tell them what to do. Now, the same thing with somebody who doesn't work out. You started training them, but then they start missing days, and then they start missing weeks. and then they've missed a month, and they obviously cannot perform at the same level if they miss a month. And the same thing with the dog. If the dog is not being kept up, and Robert was talking about Dalmatian, for example, as a type of dog. And there are some dogs that will hold a grudge and they're unforgiving. And if you make a mistake with them, you've actually, things are going downhill. And there are some dogs that are very forgiving. Gun dogs, generally, the bird dog breeds, are very forgiving. Those dog trainers do a lot of things that you cannot get away with other types of dogs because of the artificial breeding and selection of reinforcing traits and behaviors, that those dogs are very good at handling bad situations many times. And that's what Robert was talking about. There are many dogs, and then of course individual dogs can all be different too. We can't say, okay, every Old English sheepdog is going to be this way, but we can say predict, and as they do with statistics, that the majority are going to be this way. And there might be an individual that's different. It's just like, a Jack Russell Terrier. It's going to try to kill your cat unless they grew up with a cat. I mean, that's just how it is. And I don't want to get into us trying to start talking about innate behaviors of each type of breed or anything. But the point is that you need a trainer who is cognizant of these things, who knows, like, okay, this type of dog, how old is the dog? How long have you had the dog? All those things are something a trainer should ask you, because those are important, and we would do that. But anyway, so I don't want us to get off on our stories like we normally do, because our problem is we don't feel like we've explained everything unless we explain everything. So unless we have a podcast on everything, but because we're so damn thorough that we just like, well, wait a minute. I remember one time there was a Lhasa who could actually jump 3 feet in the air, and it's like, wait, hold on, that's nothing. I know about, I know about this beagle. There was a 3-legged beagle who could run really fast, So these are anomalies, and we don't want to get off in that because we got some weird stories, and we haven't heard about a lot of things that we normally hear about, in our podcast this time around. But anyway, so that's what I have to say. I think that that's a pretty good. Now, people, you got to play this back. You don't just listen to this once, because there's a lot of gems, a lot of things in here for first-time people. You're not going to catch everything the first time around. You're going to have to go back through and take notes, by the way, too. And it's jam-packed with information, like all of our podcasts are. But anyway, Robert, you got anything you want to say in closing here?
Yeah, I just feel like, you have to really get to know your trainer. I wouldn't, a lot of people now are doing stuff through text. Like there's appointments I've set up strictly through text. I've never spoken to them. We don't even have a conversation until I get to their house. I think that if that's okay if you have an in-home trainer like I am. But if you're going to have a board and train kind of guy where you're not really going to be involved in the training on a day-to-day basis, you need to know what kind of trainer he is, even more so than somebody like me. Now, for me, a lot of the evidence of my experience comes from movie credits and things that can verify that, yeah, this guy's been doing this since he was in his 20s, but professionally. But you can't do that with a lot of people. There's nothing to verify where they went to school, how long they went to school, how many trainers they've worked with who were more experienced than they were. That's why I chose to work with Christophe, because there's a guy who speaks the language that I speak, because we have so much experience. We don't have to explain terminology to each other. We know. We've been around long enough to speak the language. So what you want to do is you want to speak the language of your trainer and work with your dog. Like Christophe said, there's a lot of things that you can do wrong. Like, for example, one I mentioned to a lot of my clients is keep calm and stay separate. Because if you're calling a dog out of a stay, you're probably hurting the stay. But trainers won't tell you that. And a lot of trainers don't tell you things because they think that you're going to, share it with everybody, and then they're not going to have a job. But I feel like I'm at a point in my life where I've been on this earth for 6 decades, and I want to give this information to as many people as I can so that they can utilize it, and that method could go on in the future beyond our existence. I think that a lot of trainers today think that they invented training. They invented the sit stay. They invented all these things, but they didn't. All they're doing is variations of what our predecessors, our teachers have been doing for decades and decades. So there's no way to reinvent the wheel. It's still going to be round. But the fact is, who makes a better wheel? The guy who's been doing it for 5 years or the guy who's been doing it for 45 years? That's the question. So always learn from somebody who has experience, like Christophe said. And if you are a trainer already, seek the advice of trainers who have more experience than you do. Even if you have 25 years experience, I'm going to be looking for the guy who has 35 years experience so that he can get me to his level. If you haven't had, I know people have had numerous trainers before I came to their house. And I think that the one thing that they enjoy about me, probably more than anything, is I'm not condescending. There's a lot of trainers that come in there and treat you like you're an idiot. You don't. What do you mean you don't know how to do that? Well, what do you mean? What are you talking about? No. I mean, I can't assume that anybody knows anything. So I go in there with a blank chalkboard every time, and then I determine as time goes on how much this client really knows. Before I came, how much they can absorb, how much I can share with them that they'll actually be able to use down the road. So every client's different, just like every dog's different. Certain people, like Christophe said, don't want to know how the machine works. They just want to see it work, go down the road. They don't want to know how the bulldozer lifts up things. They just want to, have somebody do it. And then they just ride the bulldozer and not have to think about it. But that's not the way to do it, right? You need to know how to ride the bulldozer, right? So you don't go through somebody's house, right, by accident. That's. I'm not trying to be funny, but those are just thoughts that come to me. I try to terms that people can understand, and want to be able to simplify the process to your clients. And you want a trainer who doesn't talk down to you, who talks to you like they talk to their children or their spouse or their best friend. And that's what I try to do with my clients. I'm not in a contest. I want to be the first trainer and the last trainer that my clients ever have for that particular dog. And if you're a trainer and then another trainer has to come in and clean up the damage that you did because you weren't qualified enough to be able to teach them how to maintain the training, then there's going to be another trainer who's going to have to clean up that mess. And I don't want to be the guy who has somebody else come up behind me to clean up the mess that I've created. I was at a point, I know that when I was younger, there were a lot of things I didn't know, and there's still a lot of things I don't know, but I know more than the majority of trainers out there, as well as Christophe. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Christophe, and he can wrap up the show.
Yeah. Well, so basically, we're assuming that everybody's a bulldozer driver, that we're appealing to the bulldozer driving crowd. So that's something we got.
Well, it's dangerous when you're driving a big thing like that.
Yeah,
you want to make
yeah, I know. Right? Well, because I remember Steve Martin.
Bulldozer.
Yeah, Steve Martin did a bit on SNL a long time ago where he's like don't drink and drive, and then he's trying to show like the slow reflexes and stuff, and he's driving a steamroller. And he's like, oh my God, I can't stop. And it's like, it's like the guy's like 300 yards from him and he's going like 0 miles an hour. And it was pretty funny. Steve Martin used to be really funny. But anyway, so there, I knew it was going to come out some weirdness. We always get some weirdness out there. But that's what you look for in our podcast, that we have something that other people don't have. And this time we had steamrollers, and we also had bulldozers, which is, by the way, actually though, it's my monster American bulldog. That guy is like, the head. I mean, I'm around him, but I don't realize how big he is. Well, I do, but I don't. It's one of those things. It's sort of like the same but different that they say in Thailand. The photo of him though with his head is gigantic. You know what I mean? He's a guy. He's a giant guy, and if he bumps into you, you feel it. I mean, you feel it. It's like getting hit with a bulldozer, and it's just if he gets excited. Now, training him is totally different than training my other dogs, and there's certain things you have to do with them, and there's certain methods. But obviously, if I can train him to do things that other people cannot do, then I can obviously train normal dogs, like we were talking about. Like Robert's dad saying, any moron can train a border collie, and and that's why we got so many morons on YouTube and Instagram training those. Or now the dog is Malinois because they're so ball crazy that it's easy to get them to do stuff at a certain speed. But my thing again, I'm going to say this, we're going on tangents. We always do this every time I say we're not going to. We always do it. Anyway, but we're going to wrap it up because we're going on everything again. So it's one of those podcasts. I feel like I've watched some of them talking about the solar system and stuff, and they just go on like 4 hours and stuff. Anyway, but I'm going to say this, and that and that is that you've got to concentrate on what you're doing on the specific target of the dog, and you can't get sidetracked off into somebody told me about this, because a lot of people say, what about this method, what about that method? They'll come to you, what about this and that? Some of the clients, that is. And it's like, look, you're gonna have to go off of what I'm able to do, what I'm showing you, and you can't use the same techniques that you see with the Malinois or the Border Collies with every type of dog. Again, with the Basset Hound, you can't do that. So anyway, but with that, I'm gonna wrap it up, and otherwise, again, we just do everything. I have to